For over 2 months the Dustin team has been mining rich gold ground, producing large nuggets from the very first dive. 2 weeks ago they acquired rock blasting technology to blow up the giant rock in the dive hole, and they found gold that had been pressed for thousands of years under the boulder, allowing the Dustin team to recover their entire year's gold mining investment in one morning. But they believe the best is yet to come. Today the diver is going to clean out the ore at the bottom of the dive hole and dig down to the bedrock at the bottom of the creek. They dove to the bottom and found a few large stones they couldn't move, so they directly used the underwater drill to punch a few holes, inserted the blasting rods and blew them into fragments. After several weeks of digging they are finally going to dig to the creek bed bedrock today. Logically the most gold should be on the bedrock. After clearing the blasted stones the diver Carlos began a blanket search of the bedrock.
Holy, look at this gold! Look at this gold! That's awesome, man. I love it. It just is a little freaking pocket, dude. Holy crap! It's everywhere, dude. It's everywhere.
Finding gold everywhere, the diver quickly brought up the suction hose to suck them all up. However, at the critical moment the suction dredge's air compressor suddenly stalled. The air supply was about to be cut off. James immediately pulled the diver up to the surface from 4 meters underwater. Carlos said after coming ashore that when the air ran out he saw a beam of light underwater. He swam towards the light and almost didn't make it back, and he also found a pocket of gold. Now that pocket of gold is lying on the gold mat in the sluice box, James quickly collected all the concentrates. Now Wes must carry out a major repair on the suction dredge before they can start digging again. Meanwhile, 800 meters upstream from Dustin's team is the Old Man's Gold mining dive hole. They are digging a buried ancient waterfall. The depth of the dive hole has now reached 4.3 meters. The diameter of the entrance is 6.1 meters, but the diameter of the bottom is only 1.8 meters. And the diver's mission today is to move as many stones as possible and suck up the ore, to quickly dig to the gold on the bedrock at the bottom.
Whoa!
The diver who just went down accidentally found a piece of gold and immediately delivered it to the old man Fred's hand. There must be more than one piece in the dive hole. Fred asked the diver to find more gold. They believe they have now reached the rich gold layer. The diver returning to the bottom of the hole began sucking sand. The dive hole was dug like a vertical mine shaft but wide at the top and very narrow at the bottom. The diver suddenly felt scared halfway through the work and his breathing became increasingly rapid. Then he floated to the surface and told Fred he couldn't do the job. He was scared for some unknown reason. Maybe claustrophobia acted up. If you were afraid of this, why the hell are you a diver? But Fred didn't make things difficult for him. If he couldn't do it, he let him go ashore. Since the team members are all cowards who want to get rich but have no guts, 77-year-old Fred had to personally step up. This time he also brought a high-pressure water cannon. He immediately blasted the sand and gravel upon reaching the bottom of the hole. The creek water quickly became murky. Meanwhile, 800 meters downstream the Dustin team spent 3 hours repairing the suction dredge. Now Dustin's mission is to find the gold that Carlos missed. But soon after Dustin went underwater the creek water began to turn murky and the underwater visibility dropped to zero. Wes and Carlos immediately realized that the old man upstream had stirred up the water with the water cannon. Now Dustin couldn't see the gold on the bedrock at all. While Fred was advancing toward the bedrock with the water cannon underwater, Paul ashore received a radio call from the Dustin team. Wes told Paul they couldn't see anything down there. Paul immediately called a halt to Fred's dive. Although unhappy, Fred agreed to turn off the water cannon. After the creek water cleared up, Fred discovered many protruding stones on the whole wall that might fall and hit the diver at any time, so he decided to remove these deadly stones. Paul used a 3-meter-long extension drill to drill holes in the stones. Fred then hammered in expansion bolts, and finally tied steel cables ready to drag the stones out of the dive hole with the winch. But halfway through the pull the steel cable couldn't bear the strain and broke, which brought Fred's gold mining operation to a standstill again. The winch system also had a major failure, forcing them to spend another day on repairs, and the only thing that could compensate for the loss was the gold in the sluice box. Now they screened the concentrates in the sluice box to see exactly how much they harvested.
Oh, there's some nice gold.
Oh, dang.
Yay, I like that. A large picker.
Well, there's some nice chunks.
Wow.
Boy, that's a nice piece.
Bigger than I thought.
I did not expect to see this kind of gold.
This is the result of their 3 days of gold mining and the most gold they have seen in a single screening this season, which made Fred ecstatic. This batch of gold proves that there is indeed gold to be dug in the dive hole, but they still have to dig deeper to reach the bedrock before winter arrives. Fred is very satisfied regardless of the gold harvested at the current depth, because his ultimate goal has never been how much gold he could dig up halfway, but the treasure at the bottom of the ancient waterfall. Fred just wants to know what they can salvage when they reach the bedrock. Meanwhile, Dustin's team is cleaning the bedrock they took 9 weeks to dig down to. Fred stirred up the creek water with the water cannon, preventing them from knowing how much gold they had dug now. After Fred stopped working, the creek water finally began to clear, and Dustin underwater found cracks on the bedrock. It looks like a place where gold is hidden, so he's going to pry it open to check. Sure enough, he found a small piece of gold. Dustin must clean every inch of the bedrock. Until the end of today's diving operation, Dustin announced that the dive hole was officially completed. Returning to their gold mining camp, they weighed the gold harvested from the last dive. Actually, there was not as much gold on the bedrock as they imagined. Coupled with the previous harvest, this dive hole total produced 29.5 ounces 917.5 grams of gold. But this is already their best yielding dive spot in McKinley Creek. Now there is still 1/3 of the gold season left and several kilometers of unexplored creek. The Dustin team is now full of motivation.
Yeah!